eyeballs and investment into mobile. We still hear at almost every event we host a familiar lament among media buyers, especially those who are working across channels, about mobile. That they're still not getting the metrics that they want, that they're still challenged by matching users across the different channels and platforms. And that conversions somehow are lacking. No, they didn't like what I was saying back there. So I'll shut up quickly. What I wanted to do was convene three people with more experience in mobile than I can think of, led by to talk about where we really are there, how they are solving for mobile. Led by an old friend of MediaPost and one of the most experienced mobile agency executives, Rachel Pasqua, who is the practice lead at Connected Life at MEC Global. She has been at a number of agencies over a number of years, has talked mobile since I think I started talking mobile many, many years ago. Please welcome Rachel and her panel.
Thanks, Steve. Wait, is mine on? Oh, yeah, okay. All right, so while we were prepping for this panel, I came across something really interesting that I wanted to start off with. So back in 2014, right around this time of year, during the ABC upfronts, Jimmy Kimmel famously called programmatic the gluten of advertising, which I thought was such a perfect summation because it's, especially at that time, it was a buzzword that everyone was using and everyone had ants in their pants over programmatic, and it was all anyone was talking about. But when you actually started asking people questions, it was clear that nobody really had any sense of what it was or why it was important or why they should be worried about it. So flash forward 2 years later, I'd like to think, I came in here thinking that we're all past the gluten phase, but then Luke's presentation previously made me think that perhaps I'm wrong. So I won't put anybody on the spot, but if I did, if I could just have a show of hands, if I were to call on you and ask you if you could give me a strong definition of programmatic that you felt 100% confident about, how many of you would raise your hands? Anyone? Anyone? Like, who feels like they really, oh, really, 2 people? 3 people. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna give you the most concise definition that I've been able to cobble together, which I think is pretty apropos. It's pretty much what I would say. The application of artificial intelligence, algorithms, and big data to bid on advertising inventory through an advertising exchange, DMP plus DSP, in real time. Everyone feel pretty good about that? So are we past the gluten phase or not? So Steve assembled my esteemed 3 panelists from the buy side. So I'd like to have them introduce themselves, and it's just the classic 1 or 2 minutes about who you are and what you do. And then we'll dive right into talking about it at the highest level. I mean, how do you solve for mobile and programmatic in your organization?
Okay, my name is Melina X. I'm the managing director on the East Coast for Fetch. We are a mobile-first agency, part of Dentsu Aegis network, and I have been in New York since 4 months. I was heading up Fetch for the last 2 years in Germany, but previously was in China, in London, and South Africa, always in digital.
Good morning. I'm Jordan Green. I head up the mobile practice for Mela Media. Year 2016 marks my 18th year in mobile. When I started doing this, it wasn't even called mobile, it was wireless, which wasn't nearly as cool. We work with 3 different types of clients on an everyday basis. We have the buyers of the mobile industry, which end up being brands, agencies, and traditional media companies. Companies that have done mobile before and need to see better return on investment, or companies that feel that mobile little by little is passing them by, and we can move them up the curve smartly. For some clients, we act as a strategic consultant, putting their stuff back together in smarter ways. For others, we act as a de facto agency, buying a tremendous amount of mobile media on their behalf. The second side ends up being the sell side guys. So we work with ad platforms, developers, technology providers, crazy subsets of each, whose biggest challenge is when they try to sell themselves across the aisle to the buyers, that they often sound very alike to one another. So we offer them more often than not market-based objectivity, so they can see the forest through the trees. And then the third side ends up being the investment community. So companies which are very enamored with the shiny thing in the room called mobile, we will help them do what we refer to as mobile due diligence in order to offer yay or nay in terms of investment or acquisition, and then working with companies to get themselves acquired or invested in. So by living between these 3 worlds, we call it knowing the true pulse of mobile. I think it's a nice little tagline, but it tends to be quite true as well. Our clients have ranged from stuff like IDT Telecom to the Knicks and the Rangers to Publishers Clearinghouse. So lots of different verticals, but the commonality of needing to understand how the consumer or the fan works in a mobile environment. How do you address them best?
Hi, my name's Tom Kelshaw. I'm the Director of Technology at Maxis. I deal on the creative and emerging technology side, so less on the ad tech and platforms and data. This year marks my 16th year in building and selling and buying tiny little banner ads for phones. So let's see how much has changed.
All right, so solving for mobile, who wants to dive in? Huh?
Well, I think to connect to your point and also to Luke's presentation earlier, and I guess the three hands that showed really show that it's still the case. It's everybody's talking about it. A lot has, I mean, programmatic for TV, for desktop, for online general is at a totally different stage than it is for mobile. It's still a work in progress, and I think especially here in the Western world, I mean, we were just in a pre-chat comparing Asia to here in terms of data providers, DSPs, and so on, the vendors that are out there. There are just so many. Everybody is really trying to push it forward. And Luke had a good point. I mean, the technology has to be developed, but we as agencies and well, executioners who are working with the brands really have to make sure that we push it forward.
But I think that's an interesting point from our earlier conversation about the breadth and depth of mobile ad tech vendors and publishers and data providers here in the US versus other markets. Makes me wonder, are other markets better equipped to activate on mobile programmatic sooner, simply because the markets are a little bit more or less congested?
I can talk. I've just moved here from Singapore. I was there for 3 years as the seat of Southeast Asia. It is a mobile-first market. It's a mobile-only market in lots of ways. We don't have that Luma logo suit problem at such a scale. It's very easy for a few businesses to pop up at a local or indigenous level, but it's really about the scale and speed of the bigger guys that can swoop in and secure a market, sign up a deal with a telco locally or regionally, and go to work. And I think actually in some ways it does make it easier for marketers to deal with, because they really have 4 choices, not 40. And some of the brands are brands that you can take to your boss, and he understands that he or she will have recognized Google, Facebook, Twitter, Xaxis, whoever. They'll at least know those logos. It's not like Insteon or Cafaldra, and they're like, oh, how do I make a decision between these? That tyranny of choice, that first moment of truth when you look at that logo board can be kind of daunting. It's hard for agencies because we get hammered with it, but imagine a client. So I think reducing the choice, picking partners that can offer scale and speed as your first step, like, it is fine. It's fine to specialize later after you got some runs on the board. But I think for some marketers, particularly in Southeast Asia, they are looking for the reassurance of a brand that they know, that they can trust. And then after, they're willing to experiment a bit, they can move to other providers that may be better. But getting to that trusted stage is important.
I'll take it for the US market. If you truly want to, answer the question of how to solve for mobile, the first step in the US, fire your agency. It's very simple, and I'll give you a foundational reason as to why. Let's go back to the beginning of this evolution of mobile. In 2008, we introduced the App Store, and we didn't do it, Apple did it. But they started putting stuff out there that made it available for other people to introduce products and services that we call apps now. These apps, little by little, over the years, the 3 years that followed till about 2011, was mostly trial and error, people playing around with test budgets here and there. They built an app which may or may not have anything to do with their core business. And then somewhere around 2011, 2012, mobile happened to brands. They started seeing all their web traffic, little by little, going to these little devices. And it trended more and more as people were getting more of these devices. And they had to turn to somebody to help them answer the question, what do I do about this? They turned to their agencies. Agencies, one after another, can you help me with mobile? Sure, absolutely, positively. I'll take your money, even though I have no experience in this whatsoever. And they did it over and over. If you don't believe me, go look at any agency's webpage and see if they don't use the word mobile. And then you ask them questions, go 3 questions deep, and they can't answer the 4th question. Now we want to fast forward a little bit more. these agencies can't figure out how to make money on mobile. We've taken 4 banner ads and reduced it to 1. By the way, these banner ads are now less costly than buying on desktop. So they can't figure it out. Do we create a whole separate unit on the outside? Okay, that worked for a little bit. No, we have our own internal expertise. No, we're gonna take that external ad company and we're gonna roll it back into our digital group. The truth, what we end up happening is, if you have the companies who can't make money, what they can't figure out is how much resources to throw at mobile specifically. And the truth is they keep it very low, which what it does is it keeps the experience level and the expertise really away from being able to help you as a client. What they should be doing is representing you to everything out in the mobile Lumascape, not the one that we saw there. There's a whole separate one for mobile. They need to be able to represent your brand, your product, your service, and do it with diligence. Really what they do is they don't have enough time. In advance of this particular panel, I actually spoke to several different DSPs and ad networks. Each of them told me, after pushing them just a little bit, that their favorite clients are agency clients. The reason being, it's a pocket full of money that they know won't come back and ask questions about it. They actually don't have to produce real results. The description for this particular panel says there's frustrations with metrics and ROI, and it's not frustrations, that's opportunity. And if you're hearing frustrations from your agency, what's really happening is that's the wool being pulled over your eyes.
Can I just come
Those
and
are-
add the
those
agency
are
view?
fighting words, Jordan.
You go first.
I love a panel where you can actually, be upfront. Coming from the agency view, I must say, I actually agree somewhat to your point.
Do I drop the mic and walk out now?
No, hopefully not. Because I think what you describe are the very traditional agencies that treat mobile as a line item in the media plan. And it's just that little tick box on, oh yeah, we're buying on Facebook, and the little tick box that say, please also show it on mobile devices, great stuff. And they feel good about themselves and they say, yeah, we are doing mobile. And then I guess that's why Fetch was founded in 2009, and had a mobile-first approach, and which is why we're growing like crazy, because the brands are more and more getting there. But I mean, especially our clients who are in the mobile-first space have totally understood that it's not the same. You need the data. So traditionally, the agencies, the planners, and so on, they weren't data people. I guess in Luke's presentation, the data guy, right? Nowadays, what we're demanding in mobile from the agencies are essentially that the media planners, the creatives, and the data guy are kind of in one person, or at least somewhat. So what we have done, and that goes back to your point, what you said about the creative, is we have to ensure that the data is being understood so that you can actually, and collected so that you can actually optimize, but that also the creative, it always goes back to the creative, that the creative is created for the platform specifically. Not that, there's so many brands still who say, oh, we just take the desktop banners, we resize it, we push it on mobile, it will be fine.
That's the bane of our existence.
You can't do that anymore. Sorry, yeah.
Oh, no.
No. So yeah, it's the creative, and then that has to inform the media, or the data and the creative have to be, and then the media question comes.
You can tell this is a very enervating topic for agency people, and I'll agree, because I've worked at agencies where there was a very do you want fries with that mentality around anything mobile. There was also, I think, as human beings, we procrastinate, we put off things that are difficult. And this is difficult. And if in the average agency, because of the way agencies are structured and the way agencies are remunerated, it's very hard for people to, I think Luke said before, spend time learning new languages, upskilling yourself. And that's challenging for agency people because of, because of deadlines and timelines, and for so many reasons that anyone who's worked for an agency in this room will understand. That said, I think some agencies are doing a better job of it than most. Obviously, I think at MEC and throughout Group M, we're doing a very good job of making sure it's something that's very integral to how we think and how we work. We're working very hard across all the opcos, not just at MEC, to make sure that it's grassroots expertise and that everyone on every team understands that it's an integral part of their job. You know, we don't want to hear anyone saying, well, mobile's not my job. Well, no, it is. I wouldn't hire a designer who could just design for the desktop. So I wouldn't hire a data scientist who only understood desktop data. But it's difficult, and it's a process.
I think you guys are set up to fail. You really are. Because if we look at this, we have over 50% of all internet consumptions coming from non-desktops. You can't figure out how to make money from it, right? You have to make every person a mobile person. And those people just don't have any real experience doing this. Now, in reality, the executives of your companies do a great job. They give speeches out there that sound philosophical and grandiose about where the future's going. And that's fantastic. But where the rubber meets the road, there is a real lack of understanding when you have a 24-year-old ad buyer who has to try to present like they understand exactly what this particular company does.
Who better to understand mobile than a 24-year-old ad buyer that's never used a desktop except to use Excel? I think maybe you're overcomplicating it.
Some of the most best and most progressive ideas come from the 24-year-old planners on all of our teams.
I think those are great ideas. And they do. I'm with you. They understand how to use these devices better, and that's their only device. It really is. Yeah. It's funny how Excel is still the thing that we can't do right elsewhere. But when they're trying to put together a media plan, let's do it from the media side and not the creative side, okay? The media side, they just don't understand where things are going. They're still trying to answer to other bosses and get paid very little for this process. They're trying to take that round peg and stick it into a square hole to make everybody happy. And the truth is, we do have the right technology, and there are the right partners to work with to make this a very strong return on investment. The question is, how do you get there?
That's true, and we're absolutely doing that for a number of our clients, where we're tracking sales and conversions for a number of very big global clients that are happening on mobile. So I have to disagree.
That's great. I think it's stepping in the right direction.
Maybe we're an anomaly.
You are an anomaly, because like Steve introduced you, you've been doing this for a long time. But how many people inside your organizations can you say can do the same?
So I know Melina wants to say something, but she's going to have a good point here. But I think one important point to make is that in any organization, no one's comfortable saying no to the client. And I think a lot of success for us is being comfortable saying no to the client. A lot of us, we're, especially in the media world, we're sort of trained to take orders from the client. I want this, buy that. You have to be comfortable saying to the client, no, I don't think we should do a CPI campaign for this app because the app's no good. You should sunset that app and start all over again. Or no, I think we need to go back. We have to go back to the creative agency and tell them that these repurposed banner units are unacceptable. You have to have that support from the top down, saying no to the client when the client wants to push things in the direction they think it needs to go in.
I think exactly to your point, that, I mean, for us it makes it a little bit easier being an expertise agency. Like we can, pride ourselves with working with the biggest out there that are mobile first. So the clients are more likely to listen if we say, hey, we've done that since 2009, mobile first, we were mobile only, now we're mobile first. But I think the good news is that the landscape or the industry is shifting, right? Those that are ignorant to mobile and stick to, we just do TV, they're not going to succeed in the future. So and that includes agencies and brands, by the way. So I think it's in this transition phase that the transition phase that we're seeing currently. It's going into the right direction. Some are quicker than others to jump on the train and actually go into that direction.
No, I hear what you're saying. And by example, we have a client that we work with directly. And we advise them on their mobile initiatives, and we've been buying their mobile ad media going on 6 years, month after month after month. Recently, their traditional agency came in and said that they have this great DMP, and they're going to be able to buy great mobile people for them. And they turned to us and said, we'd like to give them a try because we work with them in other medias. They buy their television, they buy all their out-of-home, their print, and everything else that they work with. So they gave it a try, and working with the technology providers that exist specifically in mobile for this purpose, tracking a install campaign. Everything about it was completely foreign to them, but they wouldn't, let's say, we've never done this before. All they kept saying is, no, we know what we're doing. We've done this many, many times. Wow, many, that's a very Donald Trump thing. I won't say that again. So they asked me to join in a conference call to help these guys get up and running, which is a bit of a conflict, but we partner with them, so we would. And they got the words mostly right. Like, for example, something very simple in an install campaign with a third-party data tracking, okay? Very simple. Concept called the postback. Click, gets installed, matched together, tell the vendor, yes, we matched on you, and that's a postback, sending the data back. So they were very proud of themselves in this call. Yeah, we think we're really comfortable with the passbacks. And it was just like, no, you came close, but the word wasn't right. And then they just proceeded to go more and more. It became very clear. It's like they read an article on mobile, and then were trying to say, this is our expertise.
Sorry for that experience, but to go back, you started with saying, if the client wants to approach programmatic correctly, they should fire the agency. I think
No, I said if they wanted to approach mobile.
Okay,
if
mobile.
If they want to solve
fine.
for mobile,
okay.
That would be that.
I would say exactly the opposite, because the clients have no capacity usually to figure it out themselves. They need, I mean, you're just saying, like, even not many agencies have figured it out because the landscape is so confusing and every week changing and so on. So you do need experts in the field, and the clients have to rely on them. And in the end, it all goes back into trust. And we as agencies, like Tom was saying earlier, we as agencies have to really, when we look at who do we partner with for programmatic, it's also trust, because we need to find those partners that we trust to give us good traffic, to bring us scale, to have robust data in place, and so on. It's all back to the trust game.
It's trust and skepticism. You need a healthy mix of both, and there are vendors out there that can add your verification and your third-party auditing to the mobile programmatic game. So it's not all trust. No one should spend money purely based on trust.
No, but that was part of my point, in terms of the client has to be able to turn to someone who knows more and who's pushing the expertise or forward.
I agree with you, because she just hit the right word. It's expertise, but true expertise.
Yeah. So
I'm going to say this: if your agency comes to you and presents a concept, this new idea that they're working on, and they know what they're talking about, and they start saying things that you don't understand, and you ask them questions, the truth is they probably can't answer because they don't understand it either. Mobile is its own unique animal. And you guys actually have the advantage of coming from overseas, where mobile actually started earlier than here in the US. But you need to have that true expertise in order to be able to guide you, brand, agency, otherwise.
So my question is, I'm very curious for your answer, is if agencies are going to fail, very, very important for me to know this, just in case. If agencies are going to fail, who's going to win? If this is... two sides to this question. Like, if you can't rely on your agency, what do you suggest? And two, if you think this is really going to be the ultimate Achilles heel of agencies because you say they're not set up or won't be able to evolve fast enough to meet this need, then what's going to be the next wave?
I'm not going to say that it's going to be their Achilles heel. It is. It has been their Achilles heel for 5 years, so we have to catch up to that component first. The truth is, if they don't continue to evolve and find a financial model for them that's going to work in mobile, they will continue to lose money in media. It really is that simple. So if they have to find a model to work for them, are they willing to make that evolution? Like you were saying, how do you get enough expertise that goes across an entire area? In your case, you're talking about a holding company, right? Mm-hmm. How do you find enough expertise inside of it? The truth is, seek out people who are mobile experts. And yes, I am not falling out of line. I am very biased. I come from the mobile world out. And it's funny to continue to see people try to parade themselves like the people that we're working with when they don't have enough knowledge with which to do that.
So Jordan, what are some of the criteria for a mobile expert?
Great question. Let's start there. Okay? Go in to any mobile agency and ask them a handful of questions. Start with analytics. Okay? What analytics companies do you feel comfortable with? Okay? If they say Google Analytics as their first answer, you've got a problem, okay? What you want to hear is specialty analytics companies which live in the mobile world. Companies like Kochava, companies like Tune, companies like Localytics. These are the answers you want to hear. Ask questions. Where have you run campaigns before? What are your metrics of success? Where do you see us being able to fit into that? What countries do you work well in? You will start pushing them in questions. When they say they have to go back and talk to the data guy, that's the end of the conversation. Here's another one. If somebody shows up in your office and says that they've got a list of outbound numbers that they can sell you for text messaging because they've been compiling it over years, kick them out of the building as soon as humanly possible. There's something in the US called the TCPA that was put back with the Clinton administration that has been now widely employed for text message campaigns where people are getting sued and settling suits for $50 million. Those are bad campaigns. The key is to be able to ask questions and start to understand what these answers mean.
I was going to say, I have two to add that I think are important. One is, what's your process for vetting data? Because I could spend the next, 6 months meeting with a new data partner every half hour and probably never meet the same people twice. Just the number of partners who have unique bespoke approaches to location, I probably met with 40 of them in the past month. So I think a lot of it is, what are the questions that you ask to specifically vet mobile and location-based data? How do you call bullshit on someone who comes in and tells you that their data is the greatest thing ever? Because we all know if you meet with vendors, everybody is the best at everything. How do you discern that? Do you have a process? And also, I think, coming back to the creative question, what's your process for vetting out or separating out for a specific campaign how the mobile KPIs and the mobile creative experience should differ from the top experience? And what is your process? Do you have a process for determining how to select vendors based on that?
So to identify a mobile expert, you have to be a mobile expert, pretty much.
Ooh.
Like, do you see
Yeah, maybe.
advertisers actually go
Yeah,
walking around and asking those questions?
How about this? We just gave you 3 good ones. Start there. And you'll find the frustration on the people on the other side of the table just with those 3.
And I do think the hiring process, it really does start there, and that's been a big focus for us, is asking the right questions in the hiring process, even when you're hiring junior people, and just not even expertise, but mindset, because I think, like I said earlier, there's so much to learn and so much catching up to do for anybody. I spend time catching up and learning new stuff every day because this is changing so quickly. So the one thing that I look for when I'm hiring, no matter what the level, is someone who has a very autodidactic mindset. For example, in every interview, I ask someone, have you ever taught yourself something? And I don't care what it is. You could have taught yourself to play classical guitar or make a souffle or speak Mandarin. I don't care what it is. It doesn't have to be related to technology. Better that it's not. But do you have the type of personality and character and mindset where you're going to spend your precious relaxation time doing something hard and acquiring a new skill? So that's an important one, I think.
Talking of hiring, I'm not sure whether you are from a brand, but I think as the mobile experts that call themselves mobile experts, it's our job to go to the client and tell them, you have to ask us about analytics, here's our answers. You have to ask us about how we solve creative, about how we vet our partners, about what are our SLAs that we put in place to ensure that you get quality and so on. What do we do if we detect fraud and so on? These are, because we call ourselves experts, this is our job, because we have to assume oftentimes the client hires us because the client doesn't have the expertise or doesn't have the resources to do it themselves. So it's our job to go to the client and say, look, dear client, let's explain it in your words so that you can understand it. This is what we address. And I mean, if I look at our West Coast office, the colleagues in San Francisco, I mean, they are having intense data analytics conversations with their clients because, all the Silicon Valley clients, they are such experts themselves, and yet they still outsource it to us. So, but then here on the East Coast, it's oftentimes, I mean, now we start running workshops for certain clients and so on, because they say, okay, so mobile first, my board told me I have to get there, but how do I actually approach this? It's a totally different level of expertise, and yet, as for us, it's our responsibility to go out and educate them.
And I think on that point, there's an old software adage, which is like, the smartest people don't work for you, they work for someone else. I think if you hold that true, in an agency, the best people in mobile, they work somewhere else. So find them and speak with them. We can't claim ever, regardless of the size of your agency, the depth or breadth or variety of your network or holding company, the best people in mobile are going to be working somewhere else right now. They're probably working in Silicon Valley because that's where the real money is. So go find them and partner with them. Like, you don't need to fire your agency, you need to make sure your agency is working with the best people. I think there's, cutting out your most, hopefully, trusted advisor, the person that has equal, hold on your checkbook. I don't think is the best way. You've already set up processes of dealing with them. I think it's making sure that they are partnering with experts, if they don't have yet or ever those experts in-house.
I hear you, and that sounds great, but just to bring everything together, you have an area where they don't say no, they just say yes. And their primary goal, if you were to ask them honestly, is to make sure that they spend your entire budget for the month.
The good thing in mobile is you have data. So you actually have analytics that will be able to tell you. I mean, we overlay, like for, say, a very easy example is e-commerce clients, right? You have the immediate revenue data that you have created through mobile. I mean, you can actually just show them, this is the number, this is what you spend, this is how much traffic, CPI, whatever you got, and this is what you got out of it as a result. So that's the beautiful thing about mobile. It's all trackable.
I think that's very true, but here's two problems with that. One, do you do that? And two, are you held accountable for that?
Yes, we are. I mean,
Yes.
I don't know what other clients.
It's not that complicated.
Yeah.
Like, mobile is great because it just adds all of the more real-world results-based stuff into the same reporting platforms at times.
It definitely has more letters in there, right?
Yeah, but if you're
CPI, CPA,
you don't have to be a PhD genius to delve into the reporting data out of very good kind of reporting platforms, not Google Analytics, and then overlay that with data and say, when we sequenced our ads effectively, when we used the right tool for the right job, we drove automotive buyer leads and dealership visits, which we can measure via geo, at a rate that excelled what we were doing before. That's doing mobile pretty well, right?
I think that's moving it in the right direction,
Yeah,
for sure.
so it's not that complicated.
I'd say that, but many of these companies, many brands, are still with the same agencies that they were with 5 years ago.
Then that's the client's problem, right?
I agree.
I absolutely agree.
I'm going back to the
That's
first
why
statement.
it
That's why I'm
makes
saying they need to fire their agencies to start
the
off with.
traditional, yeah.
So fire the bad agencies.
Okay, and we just gave you 5 questions with how to determine if you got a bad agency today.
Or an agency that needs help, to be fair.
If they need help, you need to find one that doesn't.
Fair enough.
Any other questions?
Good silence.
What? Okay. Hi again. You just mentioned. Oh, hey, sure. My name is Sasha. I'm a former Group M. I worked 3 years at Mindshare. I quit for some of the reasons mentioned. Now with the AdLooks, which is an ad verification tool. We're also from Europe. We come into US to have a battle with IAS and other providers. Anyways, you mentioned, and kind of to get away from talking about bad agencies versus good agencies, but actually talk about mobile. I kind of disagree with what you just mentioned about the data in mobile. It's transparent. Measurement rate on mobile is much, much less than on desktop. And all the metrics that we receive from mobile are measured on probably 30 or 40% of the overall delivery. So how do you guys address that? And my question is to anyone, but you guys, what's Melina? Melina, you position your agency as a super expert in mobile. Maybe you can have a first stab at that. So basically the question is mobile measurement.
Right. I mean, this was, yes, you're right. There are still certain areas in mobile that have to be improved. I mean, the good thing is, so here it really matters whether it's app or mobile web, right? So in the app world, what Jordan was saying earlier, our clients always have partners like Tune, like Adjust, like Kochava and AppsFlyer that ensure you can actually track beyond the install and track further so that you can ROI optimize your campaigns. If you go to mobile web and go into branding, there's still certain areas that obviously need improvement, especially now talking about the programmatic and the challenges that are out there. I think, especially when it comes to programmatic, there's still a lot of room for figuring it out completely in terms of what we are able to track and what the data in terms of richness is.
Do you work with, do you find outsource someone who is more expert in mobile, or you try to figure this out in-house?
Well,
With
the, I think, yeah, do you want to?
Oh, so well, specifically within Group M and WPP, right around this time last year, acquired MediaLets, which is the only MRC-accredited platform for measurement in mobile. So we can get a true view through, true attribution, MRC-accredited impression counting. So that's been our path, and we've seen a great deal of success. I think the big challenge there for us is adding something new into the ad ops mix, because there's so many new things already going into the ad ops mix for viewability and whatnot, that's a challenge. But there's MediaLets, and I think in the future we're going to see more platforms out there that can do this kind of device graph-based attribution that will enable us to truly figure out whether an ad in a native app results in someone a week later buying something on a mobile website or .com website. So baby steps, but we're definitely getting there, and it's very valid. More questions? I mean, we could keep the conversation going, but I felt like we kind of ended on the right crescendo there. We started before this panel by saying the best panels are always the panels where there are strongly differing opinions. So, Steve, do you mind if we just fully open it up to questions? I feel like this is the right time. Questions, contentious or otherwise?
Hi, I'm Michael Logan. I'm with a company called BidSelect. We're a native advertising platform. So, Jordan, your statement, which ignited a little bit of controversy, I think, and kind of surprised me. If you're working with an agency and they can't solve for this stuff, fire them. I feel if a brand could do it, they would, right? Why would a brand pay any additional charges if they could bring it all in-house? I personally have worked on many mobile-only campaigns with traditional or holding company agencies that do it extremely well. Within Group M, we've worked with some mobile-first agencies, and I would say they're expert, and they add their value, and because of the way that it can be measured with Tune and AppsFlyer and Kochava, which I've had experience with all three, I would ask you, so MediaPost, since you're a strategic advisor, if you're advising your clients on buying mobile, how is that different from an agency? And how does that differ from Melina's company being a mobile-first agency? Is it the way you're compensated? Because if you're not charging on top of the media cost, if you're charging on a fee for advisory, I think there are agencies that do the same. How would you say MediaPost is different from just an agency?
That's a good question. MediaPost, at its core, we are a mobile company, and we're not trying to be a television ad buying company. We're not trying to move into other elements. We know where we live, and what we see is it's evolving from here in a different way. Companies which are talking about mobile first, that's so 2013, man. 2013 is really where we start seeing companies talk about being mobile first. What we really need to be looking at now is multi-device first. And a lot of this new learning is coming out of the mobile world and spreading that way. To answer your question directly about what we do differently, we partner with our companies as opposed to acting as a vendor for them. We literally sit with them and set up larger strategic goals and determine whether or not it's going to be internal or external media that's going to be able to help that. We are compensated in a combination of ways, which depends upon how the client is working, but we consistently come in where we are not universally media-based only, because that puts you in a very, very dangerous place.
Well, just to add to that, I mean, yeah, I think any agency that is not a media agency, so as for example, we offer strategy, we offer media planning, buying, we offer creative analytics, product development. I mean, yeah, it's the same model as in depends.
And on the combination of services and a Chinese menu of things you can offer, my entire role is the other side of the menu page. It's building out the apps, building out the app to in-store experience. We have a design and R&D lab in Singapore that does just that. I think even media agencies can start to provide a range of services to make sure that they are making money in the mobile world, because it's not a clip of the ticket on the mobile spend, which, whilst it's growing, is still very small, and that is a difficult way to make money, you're correct. But most agencies of any size or scale or maturity are finding out other ways to service clients and fill a need that's there.
And sometimes it's because the clients really push for it. I mean, so we, for example, came from a media angle, then in 2009, then we started, over time, we started seeing the creatives that the clients provide. Our reputation if we run that with a Fetch name out in the industry. So we built up a big creative department, and then the strategy department, and now in the past like 18, 20 months we have added product development. So because our clients came again and again and said, hey, can't you build the app first and then market it? And we always said, you know, no, just market. And then finally we gave in, and it's going extremely well, and we've had, you know, huge success. But that was because the clients came to us and were asking for it. So
yeah.
Again,
you know, the mobile world is just a digital world looked at slightly askew, and to attempt to use the same models that's been used since the new askew market don't seem to work quite right. I'll share with you one thing. I was speaking at an investor conference recently, and I got asked a very specific question, which I thought was great. They asked me, are most agencies buying mobile on purpose? And the answer, I think we will all agree, is probably not. They're being given the medicine that Google made them take, because if you want to do search now shows up on whatever device they want you to. They're clicking the box on Facebook.
No, I have to disagree there, though. I can think of one or two clients of ours maybe that aren't buying mobile specifically, and for specific reasons, valid reasons I won't get into. All of our clients are buying mobile specifically. I think the question, a better way to put the question might be, how many are buying much more mobile than they realize unwittingly? Because if you just looked at what our clients are buying that's specifically mobile, decent size, but nowhere near, for most of them, not all, what the MMA recommends, which is what now, 15 to 20%. But then if you looked at what the rest of it, which is 3-screen buys with big media partners, how much of that is showing up on mobile devices that we can't see? And I'd argue it's a good 40 to 50%. So I think there's a lot of, what's the word I'm looking, a little bit of blindness to how much is actually showing up on mobile, and that is a problem.
Unwitting, I think, is a good
Unwitting.
word.
Well,
unwitting,
isn't
yes.
part of the problem that helps exacerbate the larger problem, which is mobile is no longer being seen as somehow distinct, a distinct environment, but that we've sort of been sold the Kool-Aid that it's just a smaller screen. Whereas as a fundamental experience, it's different from the desktop that seems to have bled so naturally over into mobile.
They don't realize how big the volume is. We have a very fragmented, from the brand side, a very fragmented view of what's actually showing up on these smaller screens. And if we could efficiently see, and that, like, the reason we can't is endlessly complex, and it's everything to do with, you know, the way IOs are processed, to the programmatic platforms, to the way the publishers are setting up the campaigns, and vice versa. But if we could actually see a true picture of how much of our campaigns are showing up on these smaller screens, there would be significantly more investment in mobile in all of its various iterations and flavors, both on the brand and agency side. We're not
But would
seeing
there be
it.
a different kind of investment? I mean, once that awareness becomes high enough that, look, it's not just a smaller screen, it's a remote screen. It's a screen that's being referenced by a person probably at a different point in the consumer journey, even at a different physical place, that changes the value of it and even changes the whole strategy behind doing it. And that my point is that part of the problem is that mobile has simply so easily melted into all of display that it no longer has that distinct quality that requires expertise, different strategy, and maybe greater potential.
I would say that you hear a lot of people say mobile first, but how many people actually are starting there and moving on? Maybe it's a time that we start rethinking what digital looks like as a whole. And the one that I can think of from a publisher standpoint that I think has done this decently well is ESPN. They've gone through a lot of iterations of what their websites look like. But if you go back and visit their website on a computer and you go visit on a phone, you can see how they seamlessly go together. but it clearly came from the mobile component first that built its way back up.
Rachel, panel, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let me ask our next panel to come forward. For the next panel, which is actually going to take up the question of bringing more programmatic. Part of that, of course, as we know, is our questions of transparency that have been there for a long time, but also as the brand marketers are getting closer to their customers, wanting to take ownership both of the data and also have closer contact to that full customer journey informs part of this. But it's fraught with peril, fraught with cost, fraught with complexity, and the question of whether marketers really are ready to take that complexity in-house. To take the lead on this panel, we have an old friend of ours, Cesar Brea, who is the partner at Force 5 Partners, also the author of Marketing and Sales Analytics. He has worked at a number of agencies in the past, including Razorfish, and at the consultancy Bain & Company. Please welcome Cesar on our panel.
Thanks very much, Steve. And first, I'd like to thank Rachel and Melina and Jordan and Tom for getting the pot stirred here this morning, making sure we've got everybody's attention. And that'll be a tough act to follow, but I'm very confident we've got the group up here to do it. So let me just start by saying, so as I'm doing a little bit of homework to try to prepare for this panel discussion, I have the Watson API wired to my optic nerve, and it calls out when I'm reading about bringing programmatic in-house, words like transparency and trade desk, and also observes that these things start with TR, and that the word trust also starts with TR. And so, we're all the Watson API, as you can tell, is evolving and it's getting more and more sophisticated. And reminded of that old saying about how when you're at a poker game, if you're wondering who the sucker is, it's probably you, right? So that's sort of one side of sort of the programmatic, of the in-house programmatic trend. The other one, though, apropos of an article, let's see, in Ad Age, Jack Neff, April 5th, as marketers take control of ad tech, complexity follows. And then on May 17th at OMA Programmatic, Luke Heigl, programmatic is frigging confusing, right? So you have the other side of this, which is, we want to increase transparency and trust, but on the other side, this stuff is really hard to do. So we assembled a panel of folks here this morning who have an interesting perch in a lot of maybe wrestle with this challenge. So Bruce Kiernan's at MEC, and Andrew Sandoval at Media Kitchen, Eric Seid at Media Assembly, and Cindy Stockwell from the Trillia Media Group, which also, by the way, starts with TR, that came across at Hill Holiday, right? So, so we thought we'd explore a little bit, what is actually going on, what kind of experiences people are having, what criteria you might apply, what roadmaps you might follow to sort of bring this in. So thought we'd start by asking each of our panelists to introduce themselves a little bit and tell us about their responsibilities, their organizations, and maybe a little bit about how they got there. So Bruce, do you want to start out?
Sure. Bruce Kiernan, as Cesar mentioned, I work at MEC and most of my time working with clients to build programmatic solutions, evaluate data opportunities. Those solutions vary from full agency service, brand service, managed service, run the full gamut. So excited to be part of the industry at this time where we're all collectively trying to find better ways of working with new methods of buying.
My name's Andrew Sandoval. I'm the Director of Programmatic Media at the Media Kitchen. And at the Media Kitchen, we define programmatic media really as we think back to search as the original program. We built our programmatic media practice a few years ago. So now my duties, I oversee our team in buying paid search, paid social, and any kind of display buying in working in the programmatic channels.
I'm Eric Seid. I work at Media Assembly. I've actually only been at Media Assembly for about 6 months, and prior to that, worked primarily in all ad tech. So this is actually my first agency experience, but have seen that this is really the evolution of where things need to go. Knowing what happens when you send IO business out to technology companies, knowing where that revenue goes. This is really, I would say, when you said trust and transparency, knowing and having the trust of your partners that the media that they're giving you and the money they're giving you is going towards actual media in market.
I'm Cindy Stockwell. I'm the president of Trillia. We launched Trillia just about a year ago from sort of the foundation of Hill Holiday Media. And we launched at a really interesting time when transparency was already a huge issue in the trades and for clients. So we launched with a mandate of being fully transparent to our clients in sort of all aspects of media, including programmatic. So it's just an interesting kind of place for us to sort of watch what's going on in the industry right now.
Terrific. All right, thanks, guys. We thought that a good place to start with these is actually to put some stories on the table before we draw any conclusions. And so maybe, Cindy, we could start with you and bring it back this way. I wonder if you could tell us, you see a lot of clients that are wrestling with the choices about going in-house or what to keep with agencies and everything. And I wonder if you could share some stories about successes that organizations have had bringing some of that in-house, and then maybe some other lessons learned situations that you've observed as well.
Sure. So successes, I think, kind of rely on clients having a big programmatic spend so that they're looking to try to sort of keep from paying a lot of fees to agencies. They have a lot of data and that they want to protect and use across their various brands. I think and we're going to talk a lot about sort of some of the challenges of bringing in-house and the ways that organizations need to be structured, so I don't want to get too far into that right now. But I would say that most organizations, sort of mid-sized client organizations, it's really challenging to bring programmatic in-house. I don't know that they're set up for it. I don't know that they will be set up for it. We see some clients sometimes try to bring pieces in-house, so whether it's doing search in-house or doing paid social if they're managing their social platforms and wanting to do paid social. That sort of disconnects that part of programmatic from the rest of the funnel. And it makes it difficult to share learnings across all of the different channels. And we see huge success when you start to understand sort of what's working in paid social, and then how do you migrate that over to other channels like search, using the search copy, as a reflection of what's going on in paid social. So I would say that, successes are, in my mind, happening at maybe a very big client level, and I think they're happening when they're working very much in coordination with their agency, and their agency is providing a lot of guidance and kind of leadership in terms of how the market is evolving. And I would say challenges are happening when a client isn't able to scale the practice in-house and they're not able to pull everything under the roof, including creative as well as programmatic.
There's a couple areas embedded there. One is the math around the scale you need, and the other one is sort of the degree of integration that you can achieve. I want to come back to those in the subsequent set of questions here. Eric, tell us sort of a best of times, worst of times, a couple of stories on either side of that divide that you're aware of.
Yeah, I think there's two types of in-house. I think for agencies, there's been in-house, taking back the responsibility of programmatic from outsourced technologies, and then of course there are also clients and themselves looking to take all of that in-house, and I think those are really two distinct kind of points, and I think they both share the same challenges. The first biggest challenge, I think, is people. Specifically, even before my arrival, I know one of the biggest issues was taking people that had been other groups, whether client strategy or analytics, and trying to repurpose them in the field of programmatic. I think what we experienced was turnover, which obviously is not an ideal scenario, and it makes it difficult, specifically in this day and age where these skill sets are so needed that any sort of turnover can oftentimes lead to difficulties finding replacements. And that would go double, I think, for looking specific solutions that don't necessitate a lot of talent, it can be really difficult to try to bring someone in if all technology companies are housed in certain big cities, to try to bring them into a certain location. Successes, I think we've seen some fantastic success about getting, as I said, more meaningful media and market. And I think that doesn't mean just more impressions or more search results or more whatever. I think it's looking at actual meaningful results. So whether that means that more people are viewing your ads, or more people are completing your videos, or percentage-wise getting more meaningful media and market, only benefits our clients. And I think we've really seen some fantastic results when we have case studies all over the place where when we brought things in-house, we were seeing such drastic improvements that there's no reason why we would, I think, ever go back to that old model. Is there, as you think about it, is there a sort of a poster child for the success case of bringing programmatic in-house that you're mindful of, that sort of illustrates that? I mean a brand. I would say one of the brands that we work with a lot is AMC, and obviously they have unique KPIs around getting people to watch some of their really innovative TV, and go watch it if you have a chance. But specifically when we took over the media for them, we saw just fantastic improvements across the board, whether it be more video views or more viewable inventory, the quality of the inventory, everything was drastic improvement that they were really impressed with what we were able to provide for them. And that doesn't just go for those just strict numbers, but the behavioral analytics and data and information we were able to supply to them that they're able to repurpose across search and social, and search going back and giving everyone else information, to be able to repurpose all of that information across all of their other digital channels. We're able to help influence what's happening, what particular audiences are interacting with, how they're interacting, and really able to kind of influence their entire digital strategy just with having everything in-house, where we weren't getting that sort of feedback elsewhere.
So you raised another interesting criterion I want to come back to afterwards, which is this notion of whether and how to go in-house depends on where you're coming from, right? Were you working with, just depending on which partner, be it an agency, be it an ad tech vendor, whatever. Andrew, how about you? Tell us, give us a sense for success stories you're familiar with of people doing this and people who maybe have struggled with it.
Sure. I think my primary story and my major success story that I feel like we think about at our agency is actually referring to what Eric just talked about agencies buying in-house from technology partners, or even from a holding company trading desk. A few years ago at the Media Kitchen, we basically brought a lot of our buying in-house. It started as a slow transition. Initially, we moved all of our programmatic buying in-house to our paid search team, which I mentioned earlier, and we actually expanded kind of education from the paid search team to the larger agency. So now we've invested in taking a lot of those traditional digital media planners, the ones to enterprise, and kind of doing them traditional, in our programmatic tools. On a number of clients, we've just seen there were massive improvements in performance throughout this phase, and that's kind of what sped up the transition, I would say, throughout the years. In the beginning, I think, and it wasn't just purely, I think, cost savings. I think that's something that a lot of that we anticipated. Obviously, margin differences. We work on a different. We don't charge a percent of media. We work on a full-time staffing retainer, so we knew there were going to be some savings from that, just moving off a margin-based model. But just the performance we saw in general was really day and night when we changed. And I think for us, we had belief that the performance was going to be better, but I don't think it was based on any of that cost. It was really based on, we were playing a game of telephone between our clients and our trading desks and any of our technology partners. And the idea was, somebody mentioned earlier today about agencies really actually being invested in their clients, and really putting in the blood, sweat, and tears because we care about our clients. It made no sense for those teams to then turn to a technology partner that didn't feel the same way, when we could bring it in-house and do it ourselves. And I think that's really where things have paid off. Nobody understands our client's business more than us, or at least we would feel that. We feel proud to say that, and that was another big impetus about why we brought it in-house. And so that's, I think, was our major success, and we continue to see that kind of play out as we move forward. And I think we were kind of the beginning of a curve where other agencies started doing that, and I think it's really borne itself out in the results we've seen since then, and our clients are very happy about it.
So for those of you keeping score at home and assembling a list of criteria for what to do with programmatic, we've hit the scale issue so far, the math behind it, number one. Number two, we've hit the degree of integration that you either achieve or give up by virtue of bringing it in. We've talked about your ability to staff the team. We've talked about the partner that you're bringing it from. And we've also talked, I think, apropos of the blood, sweat, and tears comment, about the degree to which your existing partners actually get your business and actually are, have your interests, the trust factor, again, coming into play. There's a listicle building that somebody will publish on MediaPost, I'm sure, in the very near future. The first one to hit the send to Steve or to Ken out of this. But Bruce, your turn to a couple of success stories and then maybe some new criteria that you would add to that list.
Sure. I'll try to think of new criteria. That's a pretty long list. I think that what we've seen at MEC, and I think really across all of Group M, is there are clients that want to bring programmatic in-house just to do it, and there are clients that want to bring it in-house to do it the right way. In the latter scenario, we find that the promise of programmatic tends to be automated buying, centralized management. But when a client actually starts operating the tools, they find that this is a more complex and vast market on the supply side than I think we've ever experienced before. So oftentimes we get requests from our clients to say, okay, I've set up my DSP, I've set up my DMP. What kind of data should I put in? How do I open up a PMP? What do I talk with SSPs about? What does access mean? These are things that you need to consider in an efficient programmatic practice. And the other thing I'd say is, when a client kind of explores the possibility of bringing programmatic buying in-house, there's a lot of fog that we have to clear up as the media agency, because there are more tech companies and tech startups now than there ever has been. And those companies, especially the ones that have been acquired by bigger tech companies that already have kind of a relationship with our clients, again, come in with these unique, propositions and aren't necessarily completely true, or I would say transparent. And it's important for us to consult with our clients, let them know that programmatic isn't a vertical. It's not like mobile or social. Programmatic is a method of buying. It's a method of buying that was spawned from a necessity to navigate a supply-side market. So that should be across everything that we do. And it's very difficult to assign a media agency to carry and to champion your holistic strategy while keeping a buying method kind of separate or in-house without much insight into what's going on within that buying method. And to be honest, and oftentimes we find that they really aren't cost savings once you build a stack that you need to build. But other than that, most of our clients find that after bringing it in-house, they want to find ways to bring the agency back in so that the tools and the technology that they adopt and they activate can work to the best of their potential.
So thanks for that. I think I want to come back to these criteria and maybe evaluate and talk about each of them a little bit more in depth, and to get a sense for, first and foremost, as people think about what to do with their programmatic programs, whom to entrust with them, whether to build their own capabilities in-house, thinking about what criteria to apply and how. So I have a buddy named Tom Triscari that I've learned a lot about programmatic from, who has gone through and done some really good math on the stack, talking about, for example, the proportion of spend of the programmatic dollar that goes to the MSP and then to the trade desk, and that gets lost in sort of viewability and fraud issues and so forth. I wonder if and I'll let you guys pick up on this as you wish here. Live math is always a little bit of a dangerous exercise. To talk through, maybe take a case study and give me a sense for the scale here. How do you determine the amount of programmatic spend that you have to have before it makes sense to bring it in-house or to entrust it to a different partner than, say, one of the ad tech vendors you may be working with? How do you sort of unpack that and talk about some of the different layers of the programmatic stack to figure out, what has to be true in each of those layers to make it make sense?
I'll jump in here, I guess. I think it's important to, I think it has a lot to do with everything else that's going on. Probably just yesterday I got asked about trying to activate something like 5,000 or 10,000 emails. And it was a list of 5,000 or 10,000 emails, and they wanted us to onboard it to be able to purchase these emails directly because they could do it in search, and they wanted to do it in display and mobile. Knowing the math behind it and knowing how many, just email addresses, how many of those are actually going to get matched, and then knowing, okay, how many impressions are we actually going to serve against these emails, I specifically told them, I go, giving that to us is not going to be the best use of A, our time, or B, your time. That if you can get a partner to do it because they're going to do it A, more efficiently, and there's going to be a lot more cost efficiency behind it, it's better off that you do it. And I don't think there's necessarily a formula or a math equation that is going to allow you to say, okay, this is the exact cutoff when I should do it, and here's the cutoff when I need to give it to someone else. I think it has to do with the manpower behind everything that you're currently doing. I think it has to do with the amount of, I guess it's really the amount of money that's going to be behind the type of buy that you're going to be looking to do. And I think you kind of have to weigh those two together. And knowing how busy your team is, how if you're understaffed, overstaffed, if you have available time, if you've got to engage with a new technology, if to sign a new contract, these are all things you need to come into play. And whether you need to get it done fast or you have time to kind of, I guess, wait for contracts to get signed, these are all things I think that need to come into play when you try to make an overarching decision on whether or not you need to take the money, because sometimes it might just be $200 worth of spend, or probably even less when we talk about 10,000 emails. I was trying to do the math in my head. I'm like, I'm likely over a period of time going to spend about $20 on this, and I'm going to have to go to a bunch of technology vendors, find the best ones who are going to give me the best price. I have to, we're talking about 10, 20 phone calls, emails, all of these things. For me to spend $20, it does not seem like it's the equation just doesn't add up there. So if they can, I can give them a bunch of people to engage with. I can give them emails, and they can pick the best partner, and they can get it done in a way that, in an efficient way that I can't currently, and my team isn't set up to do it that way. Where, we do things in either more scale or when things are a little bit more geared towards our skill set. So I think there isn't necessarily an equation, but I think there is a lot that needs to be factored when you make these decisions.
Right. Anybody else? I have a follow-up question on that, but I want to hear your take on that, Cindy.
So I think a lot of clients thought about bringing programmatic in-house because if they're sophisticated enough, they understand where the industry's going. And they understand how much media and how many different types of channels and platforms and things like that are moving towards programmatic, with television, with digital out-of-home, et cetera. And so they kind of envision this time when they're going to be paying so much in fees that maybe they don't understand. Yeah. And I think the real sort of change that we'll see in the industry as we start to move, I think, towards more transparency, is helping clients understand what they're really paying and how that complexity, as they move towards all of these other channels, they're going to actually be better off in a place where there are experts that can scale more quickly. At an agency, let's say, but they have to feel that confidence and that transparency and the trust that you talked about with that agency in order to make that relationship work. So I don't know that there's a magic number, and I think in part it is because we are seeing such huge change in the industry, and it's happening so rapidly. I mean, in 3 years, we've seen 4.5 times more spending among our clients moving into programmatic. We've increased our staff 3 times over. And to be able to scale and to be able to change like that, it's hard. It's hard. It takes a lot. It's hard to find the talent. It's hard to, and I just think we're going to see that rapid evolution continue over the next, foreseeable future. And I just think that trust is what really needs to change.
Andrew, you wanted to jump in on this?
I'm just thinking that the first step in terms of evaluating this is really understanding the resources you have and how much it's going to cost to acquire those resources. And really what I was thinking about when Cindy was speaking, and Bruce mentioned it earlier, is I feel clients are now, that the first step is really education. And it's educating themselves about the tech stack and the way programmatic works and where their money's actually going so that they can actually make this valuation. More and more, our clients are establishing their tech relationships themselves. And I don't think we see it as a threat to our relationship. I think it's actually, it's another opportunity to partner because a lot of the tech partners they're choosing are kind of the same partners we are for the same reasons, for transparency, for trust reasons. And I think, and I think that's kind of a good step. I don't want to say as an alternative to going in-house, but it's something that comes in-house where the agency is still very important and we still all kind of work together.
I'll round it out.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So I think that scale definitely plays a factor, but I'll echo the points of my fellow panelists in saying that, I don't really think clients understand, these agreements that they get into with ad technologies and platforms. I think they know they need a tech stack. I think that when, they're posed, they're asked the question, do you want to own that relationship? Do you want the agency to own that relationship? Do you want to piggyback off of, a holding company agreement? They don't know what the risks are. And when we're dealing with so much data and so much valuable data, I would argue in some cases overvalued data, there's a tendency to bring everything in-house. It's to say, well, I don't really understand this, so I'm just going to keep everything close to the chest. And I think the other thing that promotes that is this, this idea that, transparency is absolutely 100% critical in developing trust with clients. I believe it's an important component, but I don't believe that transparency is the only precursor to trust. I think that we don't place enough of an emphasis on value and value that's being provided to a client, whether transparency is there or not, to kind of forge that trusting relationship. And I think because that whole idea of transparency has, I would argue, run rampant within our industry, clients are being very reactive in bringing everything in-house again because they feel as though I need to know everything that's going on, I need to know every fee, I need to know every data partner, I need to know every kind of portion of my CPM, regardless of whether or not it's offering them, true efficiency or true value.
So that's really helpful. Is I think it comes back to the idea of criteria for evaluating what to bring in-house. It's not, as you've suggested, if you make a monolithic decision either way, keep it all out or bring it all in, chances are you're probably not optimizing that decision. Sorry, was there a question over here before we go further? I was going to
ask you guys. In
Tell us your name and your Joe.
Joe
okay.
Dodato, yeah. I was just going to ask you guys, in terms of building that trust, I think, Andrew, you were saying that you just have a retainer. I also heard some agencies winning accounts by sliding over a contract saying you own the data, regardless of our relationship, and if you move on to another agency, you continue to own it. Do you think a couple of these things might develop trust, and is this scalable for the way you guys are working for just a retainer? Is that profitable enough for the agency? Can you continue to grow and service? So those are a couple of things I just want to ask you guys.
Yeah, I would say yes, it's profitable. I would say those are two, I think, important things in building trust. We operate that way. And I don't know though, and I would agree with Bruce that I don't think that clients necessarily understand everything they're paying and the value of it. And so, there are articles sometimes that talk about the percent of a budget that's going to actually the cost of media. And there's so much hidden in that, that to me, trust is about just helping clients understand, why are you what's the value of the data that they're paying for? What's the, ad fraud, those types of brand safety kind of measures. All of that goes into, ultimately the cost in programmatic. That's going to happen whether it's in-house or not in-house. And I think that clients, kind of hear numbers, and it's very reactionary. So I do think the more that you can help educate them, the more that you can be open and honest with them, the better for the long-term relationship overall.
Oh, I was going to say, to echo Andrew's point, Assembly, we work on a completely transparent fee model. So any fees are completely transparent to our clients. So they know exactly what's being given to them, how much they're paying, how much media is in market. And I think it's a great step forward. I think when we talk about value, obviously there's a need to prove out the value, but I think we need to make sure that if our client doesn't know what they're paying for, how are they going to know what value is to them? So that's why I think real transparency is, kind of showing them what the value is that they were missing. I think that's a real way that we've been kind of positioning ourselves in market is we're giving you, the tools, and we're going to show you what you've been missing out on in market because you haven't really understood what the value has been for all of your programmatic media.
So when we talk to clients about the way that we want to get compensated for programmatic, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that we can kind of customize that conversation. One thing that I think is important to remember is that programmatic is part of an infrastructure, right? It's not just an ad hoc kind of tool. So when you're building a programmatic stack, we always advise our clients to build for the future, right? And it's public record that DSPs, particularly, they are not companies. They not to your with that, you know, unquote, cut out the middleman and have a transparent technology stack. Great, but is that technology investing in their future? Are they investing in their people? Are they building a roadmap to get to a place other than just being acquired by someone bigger and cashing in and retiring on some remote island? I don't know, but these are things that we advise our clients about because just because a technology platform is making money doesn't mean that revenue isn't being served in their best interest and isn't being invested in the future of programmatic, because I think we can all agree programmatic is the future, and the companies that are going to invest in that future and invest in ways that are going to provide value for their clients today and next year are the ones that brands are going to want to work with.
So, sorry, go ahead, Andrew. Yeah.
I want to go back to the original question, just to kind of close it out about the data responsibilities and data agreements. I mean, Bruce just said advising clients to think about the future. And whenever we would advise our client, I mean, we would never want to own the data because we would tell them they need to plan a solution for the future. And that future is probably, at some point down the road, probably not going to include the agency, if we think hopefully long into the future. So we would tell them to make any of those DMP data decisions, and who owns their data, it's their data. They should guard it as strongly as they can. If any agency is asking for that data or wants to use it for any other use, whether it's for other clients or anything, then I would be super skeptical of that.
So some good criteria so far, though, for coming back to this trust question. I think number one, I think Cindy, you've touched on the importance of education and unpacking the way the dollar gets spent. We've talked a little bit about Eric. You touched on it. This notion, look for education, right? And then maybe part of the answer here also, and this is maybe what I want to probe on next year, is thinking through an appropriate division of labor. These agencies and partners. There's maybe some stuff you can leave the act vendor. There's stuff that it makes the most sense for you to control, and there's stuff that perhaps the client should be doing as a way of actually getting their hands dirty and getting some actual hands-on experience with managing aspects of this. Perhaps it's marshaling the data they should have a DMP, setup that they run. I wonder how far you've sort of gone in that direction, and maybe you could talk about in different clients kind of how that division of labor has settled out, or are you finding that it's usually the right answer to centralize everything in your shops?
I think when it comes to the data that we can use to make our buys smarter, it's more of a collaborative effort. We advise our clients to build an infrastructure that's holistic and not just geared towards the paid media insights. So for that, we've got some great kind of operational models with our clients to tap into data sources that they may have but not know that they have, or not know could be useful for
What's
a
an
paid
example?
media
Just
approach. So the different databases that clients such as AT&T or Marriott, these are clients that have rich database inventory. Accessing the database inventory is actually the easy part. Identifying what criteria you want to kind of carve that database into, so that you can create test and learn models, and you can actually gear or customize the creative or messaging experience to the user, is a bit different. And people who traditionally work within the direct mail or email aren't used to having the same type of dynamic creative and kind of holistic cross-channel discussions that we are at a media agency. So we play a big role in kind of tying those pieces together on the client side, so that we can get the right people in the room and do some educating about how to activate this data in a very powerful way.
All right, before we've got about 5 minutes, and so I want to ask each of you if you have the thing that thinking about taking it in-house that you think should be maybe the most important criterion that they consider. What would it be?
Hire agency people.
Do you have the staff for this? Do you have the resources?
Honestly, I think it's education and building an infrastructure that it won't just be, it works well for a year and then fails. Because that's, I think, where a lot of advertisers will likely run into a wall.
Last word, Cindy.
I'd say, do you have a dynamic culture that is able to scale and change quickly and not have lots of layers of approvals to get that change to happen?
Good advice. All right, who's got for us? Anybody have, as marketers, specific experiences going in-house that give us some good reflection on what we've experienced here?
One issue that come up in our own pages at MediaPost among some of our columnists, and in fact it informs our event tomorrow on marketing technology, is the thesis that ultimately marketing technology is going to subsume or eat a lot of the ad tech stack, and I wonder how much the impetus, or at least the desire to bring technology in-house, has to do with the need to integrate the ad stack in with the marketing stack, which more brands want to keep and are already building in-house.
Yeah, I think it's certainly a challenge for brands. I think again, we try to preach as an agency a holistic tech stack, and data is only as useful as its ability to kind of integrate and inform other technologies or other data. I think where that really comes into play is with ownership, and I think that as long as our clients own the data and they're partnering with tools and technology that have a certain plug-and-play component to it, is another thing that we try to encourage, that they'll always have best technology regardless of whether they're consulting agency. So I think the market lends itself to that kind of plug-and-play infrastructure, and I think that clients are certainly taking advantage of it.
I would say one other thing we're seeing is that at the client side, there is sort of a push and pull between the marketing team and the chief information officers, if you will, and who owns sort of this piece of the puzzle, and that can really affect whether clients want to bring this in-house or not bring it in-house. I think if the information side of the business doesn't have a great relationship or doesn't have a relationship with the agency because they haven't been sort of involved in marketing and all of that, you start to see a little bit more of who wants to kind of who wants to own it, and then how do they want to execute on that ownership.
So that's very interesting. It's not just about bringing it in-house, but bringing it into which room of the house is sort of a big consideration as well. So good. Anybody else? Questions, comments? All right. So thanks very much to our panel, and we'll eat lunch.
Thank you, Cesar. Thank you very much. And thanks, panel. Before we break to lunch, by the way, this morning we were more on the buy side. This afternoon we're going to focus more on the sell side of programmatic. We'll be talking to Viacom. We'll also be looking at header bid as well as the use of first-party data on the